Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Erin and today I am doing my palette ranking for 2023. So I did a video similar to this last year and I'll make sure to link it up in the eye and also link it down below. But I'm basically going to be taking all of the palettes that I purchased in 2023 and putting them in ranking order for you guys. And surprisingly, I only purchased 11 palettes last year. And that makes me a little bit sad, but also makes me reflect on how expensive makeup has gotten, that even with my budget last year, only 11 palettes came into my collection. What I also found surprising is that, let's see here, only 4 out of the 11 are from mainstream brands. The rest of it is from indie brands, and that also makes my heart very, very happy that I was able to try out some more indie brands last year. I have some thoughts on these. Some of them are newer in my collection. Some of them I've been able to play with all year round. Some of these are newer to my collection, so I maybe have used them 2 or 3 times, but I will say that all of these I was able to use every single shade in my No Pan Left Behind, which I did post my new No Pan Left Behind series on the 25th of January. So again, I'll make sure to link that up in the eye and also link that down below. But some of these I was only able to reach into a few times and do my No Pan Left Behind. Other ones I have had for the entirety of 2023, so I have a lot of feelings about these. I will be showing you the palettes, I'll be showing you the insides, and letting you guys know what my ranking is. A little tangent that nobody asked for, but I know whenever I first started posting on my channel again at the beginning of 2023, I was like, this is not going to be a hair channel, this is not going to be a clothes channel, because like this shirt is from Walmart. I am not somebody to go out and spend a lot of money on clothes, but my hair, so I curled my hair last night. Like I used mousse, I used product, I did my curling wand. I actually burnt my thumb on my curling wand, and my hair was decently curly last night, and I'm talking like 9 o'clock last night. I slept with it in a bonnet, and this is what I wake up to. And this is why I never do my hair. I spent 30-45 minutes curling my hair to just sleep with it in a bonnet and for it to do this. This is why I don't do my hair. This is why I don't fuss with it, because literally 20 minutes later my hair falls and it doesn't hold a curl. I know that I should probably do like the curly girl method, but again, I'm not concerned with my hair being curly. I just wanted to try something fun last night, but it kind of reminded me that I just don't need to try to curl my hair ever because it doesn't hold the curl. But let me go ahead, and I have all my palettes right here, except for one because it was already decluttered. So let's start with that one, because obviously if it was decluttered, then it is at my 11 spot. So palette number 11 on my ranking would be the Pat McGrath Labs Iconic Infatuation palette. I will have a picture of it popping up because I decluttered it. I no longer have that palette. I did pick that up at like a TJ Maxx or a Marshall's for like $15. I thought it was a really great steal for a Pat McGrath palette, but I was just really let down by the quality. The shimmers were gorgeous, and I don't know if Pat McGrath can do a shimmer wrong, but those mattes were disgraceful. And I know it is just colored powder, so it is what it is, but it had 3 different tones of brown in it, and they all blended away to basically nothing, or basically blended away to the lightest brown color. So it was impossible to build up darkness in the outer V, so that one did leave my collection, and that one is gone. The rest of the palettes are in my collection still, and I do have them here. So in the number 10 spot is the Too Faced Italian Spritz palette. And so this is what the inside of this palette looks like, and I can smell it. I can smell the citrus notes coming off of it. But this one is relatively new to my collection, and maybe that's why I am putting it in the 10th place out of all my palettes. I did get this for Christmas, so I have been able to dip into this enough to do a No Pan Left Behind on it. But I think overall, when I am comparing this formula to the indie formulas that are in the higher numbers, this does not come close. So this is a beautiful palette. It's a very good palette. I think that this is getting closer to the Too Faced formula that we know and love from 2016, 17, 18. This is getting closer, but it still does not hold a candle to the indie shades. Now, I love the color story. I could have done without the sparkly black, but I mean, you can't have a palette exactly how you want it. So I could have done without that, but all of the shades performed really, really well. So I'm not saying that this is number 10 to discourage anybody from picking it up if this is your jam, if this has been on your wish list. It is a really great palette and it's staying in my collection. I love having it in my collection, but definitely there is some other palettes coming up that beat this one out of the water. The next two might be very surprising to everybody, and that is because it is my two Natasha Denona palettes. So in 2023, I did pick up Yucca and I picked up I Need a Nude. And so I am putting I Need a Nude in the 9th place, and that is just because it is a neutral palette. So this is our color story. It is beautiful. It's very, again, it's our neutral, but it's neutral, a little bit warm, but also a little, again, neutral. It's not warm, it's not cool. This is just a beautiful palette. Everything works really, really well. There's no cream to powder shades in here, which I'm not the biggest fan of some of Natasha's cream to powder formulas. Everything works beautiful. It has this new formula that she's been doing in the shade Muse that is just extremely sparkly. Let's see, there we go. Extremely sparkly and impactful. So it does have, it also has like her glitter formula, which is in Mia and Delilah and Sheen. Like those just have this beautiful sparkle. Look at that, like just wet sparkle. That one's a little bit more impactful, but these just have that beautiful wet sheen to them. So again, it performs great, but color story wise, I have things that are a little bit more inspiring and a little bit more, I'm trying to think, it's like the feeling when you walk into a store and there's a lot of like colored gems and everything is sparkly and everything is beautiful. Like this gives me the ethereal beauty, but this does not give me walking into like a crystal shop and everything is sparkling and your eyes get big. That does not give me this with this palette. But again, it is beautiful. The formula I think is improving with Natasha Denona, and I need to wipe my fingers off. But again, great quality, great formula. Glad I have it, but it's just not as inspiring as some of the other palettes in my collection. So that would bring us to the number 8 spot, which would be the Natasha Denona Yucca palette. And again, this is just because the color story is a little bit more inspiring, a little bit more different, and also up my alley with these like earth tones that are in here. There's a couple shades in here that I'm not the biggest fan of. Willow down here, I'm not the biggest fan of. I think it ends up being a little bit patchy and hard to actually like blend out and get a really good blend with Willow, but everything else in here is very, very beautiful, and she does have a few of the special shades up here that she has started doing in her palettes. So this one would be number 8. Again, beautiful formula, wonderful color story, love it to pieces. I'm glad I have it. It is not going anywhere. But on the other side of it, when we're starting at number 7 up, that are all of our indie palettes, it's because they have that factor to them that just makes you feel something. These make me feel happy that I have them, but they don't make me feel something. And I hope that if you are a beauty lover like me, that you also understand what that feel something is, like when you just see something sparkly and beautiful and just makes your creative mind like spark up. That's what I'm talking about with feeling something. So from 7 up, all of these make me feel some sort of way. So number 7 is going to the Glaminatrix Rich Romantic palette. And this is what the inside of our color story is looking like. Now, partly, I don't feel like this is rich. I think that this is romantic. And I think that if we're thinking rich in the sense of like sparkly and glittery, yes. If we're thinking rich as in tones and color, no. I mean, you can get some deeper things over here, but this is not going to give you something rich and dark. It's going to give you something a little bit more ethereal, but you'll be able to darken out the outer V a little bit. But the entire middle row here of special shades, and then this one also, I mean, they're gorgeous. I think I've said before that I wish that the flips were a little bit different in here, and I know I can see it. I don't know if I can get it to show in, how do people do this with the lights? I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get it to show on camera. I wonder if I swatch these 3 right here. I don't know if the light will catch them properly, but they all shift to green. They all have a green shift to them. And while they are beautiful, and I love a green shade, especially greens mixed with purples, like I love it, but I wish that some of these had a little bit different of a shift to them, because having 3 special shades that all shift green, I kind of feel like you're going to get the same kind of like sparkle with a green. So I wish that this was just a little bit more unique, a little bit better with the color selection, with the shifts, but overall, I mean, the quality is beautiful. I mean, just the packaging with this like faux leather with the imprint, like everything about this is beautiful. And it's made me want to look at some other palettes from Glaminatrix. And again, I would not discourage anybody from picking this up if this is your color story, if this is your jam, if you've been looking at this. It is beautiful, it is gorgeous. Fair warning, and again, I think that I adjusted my expectations when you guys told me this, but being in the US, this did take about a month to get to me because it sat at the airport in Australia for like a week and a half. Just sat there waiting to get on the plane. So I think, you know, knowing that it'll take about a month to get to you if you are across the globe, which again, first world problems with getting beautiful palettes being shipped to us. But again, I had to manage my own expectations with that. But again, this is at number 7, just because out of all of my indie palettes, this one, I feel like I get something rather similar out of this compared to some of my other palettes that are coming up. The palette in the number 6 spot is going to be the Cosmic Brushes / Cosmic Beauty Gothic palette, and this is what our inside color story is looking like. Now with the Glaminatrix, when I said that the looks are going to be relatively similar, this is a purple palette, so the looks are going to be relatively similar. But I expect that from a monochromatic purple palette versus something that totes having a different color story in it. So now that I'm not being a hypocrite about colored powders, this one is absolutely gorgeous. I think I've said in plenty of videos, this is going to be kind of like my elevated replacement to my It's My Pleasure palette from ColourPop. The formula is beautiful. Nothing is wrong with any of the formulas. The mattes blend out beautifully. The mattes are pigmented. Like, I have no notes to the formula. Beautiful, perfect, 100%, 10 out of 10. The reason that this is at number 6 is just because, again, it is a monochromatic palette. So the looks that I'm going to get out of here when I do want to go for a purple look, yes. But the other palettes are going to be a little bit more inspiring compared to this one. But again, I think that I encouraged Andy to pick this up. And again, I'm not ever encouraging people to, of course, buy something that you don't need or that you don't have the money for. But when she was talking about this one, I was like, girl, you will not be disappointed in this. So I can't wait to hear her feedback in the comment section. Also, make sure to go follow her and subscribe. Her channel is also amazing and I love her to pieces. So make sure to check her out. I know she's always in my comment section, and I'll also link her channel in the description box below, but I can't wait to hear her feedback on what she thinks about the Gothic palette. So palette number 5, we are in the home stretch. And so that is going to be the Odin's Eye Christmas palette. And I do keep the sleeves on these. I keep sleeves for nothing else except for Odin's Eye because the art is just amazing. And so this is what this color story is looking like. I absolutely wanted this in 2022 whenever they released it, and then they did another batch in 2023, so I jumped at the chance to pick this one up. I'm not the biggest fan of cooler tone shadows, so this one was more up my alley. And then the two new palettes that came out for 2023, they were both more pastel leaning, and that's also not my jam, so I did pick up this one. I think when I'm looking at this one, my notes would be that the black is unnecessary. If you, okay, and I'm going to make a big generalization, but I think the majority of us that are watching and consuming beauty YouTube, we have at least one palette in our collection with staples. So we have a cream shade, we have a black, like we have a deep brown. So I kind of feel like when there is specialized palettes, that those shades kind of feel like a waste of space. And again, you guys can prove me wrong if there's somebody out there that is like, this is the only black that I have in my collection, or I have no other black eyeshadows, then hey, I will eat my words. But I would say the vast majority of people that are buying indie shadows, that are consuming more indie content about cosmetics, you have a black, you have a cream, you have a white, you have a deep brown somewhere else in your collection. So I kind of felt like that was a waste of space. And not only that, but it's called Happy Endings. And I would have called it like lump of coal, because Merry Christmas, black, like how is a black a happy ending? That's what I want to know. How? I'm not over here naming shades, but overall, the rest of this palette is absolutely gorgeous. It works beautifully. Everything blends. Everything is pigmented and shimmery and beautiful. There's not any chunky shades in here that I'm not a fan of. Everything else worked really, really well, and I loved these kind of like turquoise shades over here. Absolutely gorgeous. So that was my little rant and ramble about my Odin's Eye Merry Christmas palette. And like I said, this is coming in at number 5 in my ranking. So palette number 4 is going to be from Lethal, and this is the Wildflower palette. And let's see here. This is our color story inside. Absolutely stunning and gorgeous. This is the companion palette to the Night Flower, which I actually do have shades from Night Flower on my look today. And then this is the more spring pastel light kind of sister palette to that one. I would say the only reason, like Lethal's formula is, again, 10 out of 10, no notes, amazing, love it to pieces. The only thing is that since this is a little bit more pastel, this is not my jam. This is not what I'm reaching for all the time, but I love that you can deepen things up with this shade and even this purple. This pink up here is just pigmented and impactful. Love it to pieces. The shifts on some of these shimmers are absolutely gorgeous, and Lethal does shimmers like nobody else. Let's see. Let me get those on. I mean, let's see. Hopefully, I mean, they're just pastel beautiful. Like if you think of shimmery Easter eggs, like that's what you're getting. Absolutely gorgeous. So I love this palette, and really, again, I hope that I roll this into my No Pan Left Behind for the Easter time, because it is just stunning. Now, The background is that like holographic reflectiveness, so maybe not the best for if you have lights going on, but again, beautiful, beautiful palette. I love Lethal's formula, and I'm always looking out to see what Lethal is coming out with. And I actually do have one other Lethal palette in this ranking, and we will see that one in just a moment. But let's see. Number 3 is going to be my Cosmic Brushes / Cosmic Beauty Muse palette. I did pick this up during the restock in March, and I just noticed, if you guys hear in the background snoring, the baby, Mr. Wash, he is sleeping so hard. It got warm for a couple days, and then it just rained and stormed for about 2 days, and so now it's nice and cool out. So I've like had the door open, and they've been running around for like 3 hours this morning. So he is zonked out. Oh, I love his little smush face, but he is entering his teenage phase where he does not want to listen. So we're having some fun with that. But back to eyeshadow, and I'll have to show you guys him maybe in an upcoming video because he is now like 55 pounds, something like that. He is a chunk. So this is the Cosmic Brushes / Cosmic Beauty Muse palette. Absolutely stunning. Like, I'm looking in my monitor and just beautiful. So I just love this color story. I love greens and purples and pinks. I just think they go so well together. I love a lime green. Oh, so beautiful. I love putting that lime green on my inner corner. Not the inner corner, like the inner crease for that just pop of color that kind of just like pops out from a shimmer. Love, love a lime green. I think the only shade that is not kind of like up to par is the shade Fig, which is this one right here. It ends up being a little bit patchy, a little bit hard to blend out. It doesn't necessarily want to like stick down and actually like hold the pigment even when I'm using primers and glitter glues and all that jazz. It doesn't necessarily want to like just hold on to where it's at. So I think that's the only shade that I have notes on. Otherwise, I think the only other one is this shade here stained one of my brushes. So, and it was a synthetic brush. So it stained one of my Sigma brushes. So I think that if you have brushes that have white bristles and they're synthetic, this might stain because of course, you know, the pigments that they're using in these palettes, but this is absolutely stunning. Let me open back up my spreadsheet so I can look. So number 3, again, I have no notes. It's absolutely stunning. Since I'm doing some swatches, let me grab some from this palette. Oh, absolutely gorgeous. Again, like it kind of is like Easter eggs that are just beautifully sparkly, and oh, I love that. And again, this is not me digging into the palette. This is a regular finger swatch, so I'll hold it up. This is me doing this. And that's what you get. So stunning. So these are, you do not have to dig into them. You do not have to like dig your finger into them. They're gorgeous. I cannot wait to see what else she comes up with. The all blue, like the Winter Wonderland palette was not my jam. The pastel like candy palette was not my jam, but I'm curious to see what she is going to come up with. I kept looking at the Serenity palette, but it has a lot of blues, which again is not necessarily what I am digging, and so I'm curious to see what she comes out with next because I do love the formula. I love the price point, so that is definitely a brand to watch in 2024. So palette number 2, and so this is where my other Lethal shades come in, and there's a caveat to this. So I have made 2 custom palettes from Lethal, 12-pan palettes, and where I pick out the shades, I pick out the color story, and I had them put into like the Lethal magnetic palettes that they end up mailing with it. So I have 2 of those. Well, lo and behold, to my absolute delight, the Give Me Glow magnetic palettes the Lethal shades fit perfectly into them. So I had ordered another Give Me Glow palette, and I kind of did a custom palette with some of my singles into it just because the palettes are beautiful. They're gorgeous, and I kind of feel like they're relatively affordable. Like this palette here was $13. And so I feel like they're well made. The magnets are really strong in there, so your shadows are not going to fall out. But what I ended up doing, because this is a 24 pan palette, I combined all of my Lethal singles into this one palette. And so look at that color story. This is my dream. I love this to pieces. So since I did mix the two palettes together, I'm not sure what is part of the palette that I bought in 2023 and what is part of the palette that I bought in 2022. These are just all of my Lethal singles that I purchased that are not in a pre-made palette like this. These ones I picked out myself. So I did arrange them in here, and like I said, they fit perfect. So beautiful. So as you can see in a lot of the palettes, I love greens, I love purples, I love some of these like pops of these warmer tones in here. And let me just, oh goodness, I don't even know what I want to swatch in here. Let me do that one, that one, that one, and that one. Let me see if that shows up. Oh, absolutely stunning. Oh my goodness, I love these so much. Lethal has such an amazing formula. And again, this is another one where you don't have to dig into there. I'm literally like just tapping my finger and you get that sort of pigmentation. So again, beautiful formula. So obviously this is ranking at number 2 because I selected the color story myself. So of course I'm going to enjoy the color story, but also, I mean, just the formula is beautiful. The matte formula I've not had any difficulty with. The darker shades, they are pigmented, but they do end up, I mean, look at that green. They're super pigmented, but they definitely blend out. I don't have any issues with skipping or with patchiness. Everything just blends beautifully. And even on the side of Lethal is a German brand. The shipping is fast, the tracking is accurate, the shipping is reasonable, and so I do love my Lethal shades. Again, I wish that Lethal had like cuter palettes because this just inspires me seeing the outside and then knowing that this is on the inside. And they do have like Give Me Glow put where there's the circles up here. I would consider, if I like this configuration, actually like taking my label maker and making labels and putting what all the shade names are just so I would know. But overall, oh, I love this. So if you are ever thinking about doing a Lethal palette and ordering shadows, I will not discourage you apart from the price. So I think, let me scroll up because I never buy Lethal shades unless they are on sale. A lot of times if you're building like a 12 pan palette, you do get a discount for building the palette. But those 12 shades plus the palette that they came with was $79. So, and that does not include shipping because I do not include shipping in my budget. So $80 for 12 shades. So again, you have to know that if you're buying a duochrome, that's going to be more expensive. If you're buying a multi-chrome, that's going to be more expensive. So definitely go into it knowing that you're going to spend money on the shades. But again, they're beautiful. I have no notes. Like I said, I'm wearing part of the Night Flower shades, and compared to the ColourPop palette, night and day. There's a reason that ColourPop is affordable, and there's a reason that Lethal is more expensive. We'll just leave it at that. So that brings us to the number 1 palette that I purchased in 2023. And I would drum roll, but I don't want to wake the 2 puppy dogs who are sleeping in my office right now. But that is the Odin's Eye and Angie palette, the Trick or Treat palette. And again, I saved the sleeve just because the artwork is so beautiful. And so it has the same art on the palette, and then this is our color story on the inside. apart from the like earthy greens and burgundies and purples from like the Lethal palette, apart from that, this is my jam. The warm tones, the green, these greens over here have been so surprising to play with, and I'm constantly thinking about these two greens and wanting to go back and do looks with them. There's days that I know that I have to be like a little bit more neutral or a little bit more, you know, work appropriate, whatever that means, but I have to have a little bit more toned down makeup, and I think about these and I'm like, oh, I just want to wear those. I just want to have that fluorescent like slime green pop on my eyes. I absolutely love that. I'll make sure to link the video where I did the Chatty Get Ready With Me, where I used this palette and did the palette bingo because I pulled that green shade. I'll link that up in the eye and down below so you guys can see this palette in action. And I just love it. This color story. Odin's Eye formula is beautiful. The only one, and I think I've said this in every video where I talk about this palette, the shade up here, Mummy's Curse, the only reason I don't like that shade is because it's chunky and my hands are covered in sparkles, but that's the shade right there. So on the finger, when you actually get it worked in, it's great, it's beautiful. But what I find is when I'm using that as like an inner corner, if I'm picking it up with a brush, because on the hand, and my lights might be a little bit too bright, but I mean, it's beautiful and it's impactful. But if I'm trying to take a brush and pack that onto the inner corner, because it has more chunky flakes in it, it ends up just looking like dots and flakes of shimmer on your eye and not that like smooth kind of pigment that you might find in, oh, like the shade here called Deadly. It's a little bit more of a traditional shimmer, and it just is like molten pigment. So it's beautiful. It goes on just like molten pigment. So that, I wish that that Mummy's Curse had a little bit less flake to it and a little bit more, and that's maybe it, that it doesn't have a whole lot of base pigment, that it is just flakes and glitter and like mica. So that one is the only one that I don't like, but I can make it work. I will say that I can make it work, but that is the only one that I'm not digging. And this over here is a really dark brown. It's not a black, so I don't mind that shade being in here. And also it makes sense for the Halloween kind of motif. But if these palettes had a black in them, I probably would have been disappointed. So this here is the #1 palette that I purchased and tried in 2023. I am very sad that these are limited edition and limited runs, but I know, of course, with collabs, they can't keep them around forever. But I hope Odin's Eye sees that there is a market for color stories like this and that they don't have to do a, okay, tangent about Odin's Eye and why I never tried them before, the Angie palettes and stuff like that. I feel like every single palette is a rainbow palette done different. Like they all have like a row of blues, a row of greens, a row of pinks. It's almost like they're like, oh, we have to get every color into this palette in some saturation before we can release it. I think that they started doing things differently in 2023 by releasing palettes with more concise color stories or interesting color stories. But in the past, I wasn't really drawn to them because they basically were like, we need every single color, but just different. Same thing with, what is it? Nomad Cosmetics. Every single one of their palettes has like a blue row. And I kind of feel like while I have learned to love blues, I think that that's kind of just a waste of 3 or 4 shadows in my collection. So I think that a lot of these indie brands hopefully are going towards either specific color stories that don't have to have that rainbow aspect, or they're saying, okay, let's really hone in on this specific thing, which I know Nomad does a lot of like destination and nature type things, and there is blue in nature, but again, there's just, I can't bring myself to purchase any of the Nomad palettes just because they always have so many blues in their palettes. So but I will stop complaining about a company that I don't own anything from. But I think that reflecting on last year's palette purchases has kind of taught me that I am leaning more into indie shades, and there's definitely some companies that are on my radar. I want to try things from Ensley Rain. I want to try things from Bella Beauté Bar, which they're also a Florida company. So shout out to people working out of Florida. I really do want to try a Nomad palette, but I again, the color story has to fit. I'm trying to think who else is out there that has caught my attention. Adept. I do want to try some things from Adept, but again, the color story has to make sense for me because they do have so many special shades, which means their palettes are usually more expensive. So those are the brands kind of on my radar for this year in 2024, and I'm really excited. But surprisingly enough, I'm filming this video at the end of January, and nothing that has come out in January has really sparked my attention. But I feel like, what is typically our big time for palettes coming out? Let me see. So even for Natasha Denona, Yucca didn't release until May of last year. So I don't know if we'll see, because we saw the Valentine's collection from Natasha already, but I'm still waiting to see that gold collection come out because that palette will be mine. But definitely, I think that we're going to see a slower startup to the year. I think the Valentine's collections, if there are any, they're already released or already sneak peeked. And so I'm really curious what we're going to see for the spring with palettes. But so far, I've been really good. Nothing has tempted me. Nothing has like caught my attention to where I'm like really, really honing in on it. Oh, that's a lie. That's a lie. So the Ensley Rain, what is it, the Cold Moon one, absolutely gorgeous, but I wish that I could either buy the shades individually or buy the shades without the palette. I feel like the magnetic palette that those shades are in drives the cost up, but also there's some shades that I would omit, like the gray shades, I would omit them, but the shimmers, the cool tone shimmers, absolutely love them. Absolutely gorgeous. But again, Ensley Rain is one of the ones that I'm watching. I wish that it was kind of like she would sell the palettes all together, but then she also would sell like a bundle of the shadows. So if you just wanted to buy the bundle of the shadows and put them in your own palette, I wish that was an option with more indie brands. So that might be something to watch out for this year. But that one tempted me, and then God forbid, the Twilight collection from ColourPop. For about 5 seconds, I was like, oh goodness, I really want the Twilight one, because I'm actually looking on my bookshelf, which I might film in front of my bookshelf from time to time, but I have my Twilight books over there. I am on the cusp of, and when was it? I think it wasn't until the movies came out that I was interested and read the books, but looking back on them, horrible movies, and maybe outdated on the books a little bit too, but at the time, man, that was the thing. But I think that if they would have done that palette and the picture of Edward and Bella in the field on the inside of that palette, like, no, it just ruined the palette for me. If they would have just had like a picture of the Pacific Northwest, if they had a picture of like the foggy forest, like that's great. Like even if it was like a foggy forest with Edward and Bella like standing in the background, like, you know, whatever. But something about that picture just makes me cringe. So I quickly got over that palette, and I said if I really wanted a cool tone palette, I would go for the Ensley Rain one, even though it was probably 4 times more expensive. I think that I would have been happier with an Ensley Rain palette than a cool tone mediocre formula from ColourPop. And I think that ColourPop has a good formula, but when we compare it to these indie brands, it is a mediocre formula. So I think that I need to remember in my head that I am not a person that likes dupe palettes. I want the real thing, because typically the dupe is not as good as the real thing. So that's kind of my 2 cents on what I feel like is coming up for my purchases in 2024, but I'm excited to be watching the indie brands. I'm excited. So I watch Angelica and also Heather Austin. They are now my go-tos for indie palettes and what's going on in the indie community. So I have been watching their channels like Hawks just to see what they are reviewing, what they're showing. So if you are also looking to get more into indie shadows, they definitely are two that I would recommend. Plus, all of you probably follow them already, but hey, they're wonderful, wonderful ladies that are very informative about indie products and indie shadows. So, highly recommend you probably watch what they have to say before purchasing these more expensive palettes. But I am super thrilled with my purchases for 2023, except for that Pat McGrath palette that I decluttered and wish that I had never bought, and glad that I spent $15 on it rather than $65, which was the original price of that horribly formulated palette. So if you picked up any of these palettes in 2023, let me know. What was your number one pick for your palettes? I am curious what you guys are loving. I'm curious what you guys brought into your collections. If you brought no palettes into your collection in 2023, I'll celebrate you over here. But what palette did you reach for the most in 2023? Again, I'm curious for your feedback, and it kind of gives me a peek into your collections when you guys tell me what you're loving. So definitely leave that down below. Do all the other things. Make sure to hit a thumbs up on this video. I do want to have some more eyeshadow content coming out this year, especially with these indie palettes that I'm going to be bringing in. Make sure to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss out on my content. I am, if you guys have noticed my schedule, I'm posting on the 1st, 5th, 10th, 14th for my buys and buys, and then 20th, 25th, and then the 1st again. So pretty much every 5 days, you guys will be getting a video from me. So definitely stick around for my content that I have planned in 2024. But I appreciate each and every one of you. I love our conversations down below, so make sure to drop me a line. And I hope that all of you guys had a wonderful January and that you have a beautiful day. I'll catch you in my next one. Bye.